We're with Chairman Boyce at the Cobb County Government Building outside today. And Chairman, you wanted to kind of address the work that's going on down south near the water reclamation facility.
Yeah, I think it's important that we bring the people up to date on what's going on down there. They've been reading things in the media about that the spill is not having an impact on the drinking water of the county, and that's always a good thing. But I think it's also important that we understand the magnitude of the challenge we're facing down there. As you see in the first picture here, this is the tank that has the water in it that failed. And there's about 100 feet of water in there, and there's really two big cylinders, and the inner cylinder is the one that's supposed to hold all the water. Somehow something failed at the bottom of that cylinder, and it dumped water into the outside cylinder, so now there's water in that well, and that's the dry well, and it's supposed to be dry, but there's 100 feet of water in there. So we have found a way to at least contain the amount of water that's coming in there, so it's not rising or anything. But unfortunately, when it failed, it pushed water back into the system, and the pressure had to go somewhere, and it came out of the manhole covers down by Nickajack Creek, which, as you see in these pictures here, which was right next to the Chattahoochee. And you'll also see the magnitude of the spill, because you can still see a lot of the residue in the ground. That white stuff on the ground, that's kind of fertilizer, but it's not stuff we put there intentionally otherwise. And then you'll see some pictures right now. We have people on boats down there with skimmers, skimming the top of the Nickajack Creek to take care of the wastewater that was pushed out of the system onto Nickajack Creek, which spilled right into the Chattahoochee, which is right there. So what we've done, though, is we've found a way to divert the water out of a construction shaft. And that's what you're seeing right now, these three big hoses coming out of this construction shaft. And what's happening is, we were very fortunate that we left that construction shaft after we built the underground tunnel, that we stored all the water in before we put it into the water treatment plant. So what we're doing is we've dropped 3 large pumps down into this construction shaft, and that goes down 200 feet. And the reason that we've had to close down Fulton County Airport on occasion is that in order to drop the pumps down into that 200-foot shaft, we have to have a crane that's about 300 feet high, because it has to not only drop the pump down, but it has to keep the hose straight as it goes down into that well. And then when it gets down to the bottom, we have an elbow that redirects the line towards the wastewater treatment plant. And the picture you're going to see right now are the 3 hoses that are coming out of that construction shaft that are taking water directly to the plant. And we're going to drop 2 more pumps into that shaft tomorrow morning, Saturday morning. But that means we have to close down the airport again tonight, because that 300-foot crane is going to once again have to be used to drop down those pumps.
It is important to point out, as you touched on, the overflows have stopped for now. So we're cleaning up what may be left behind.
That's the one piece of good news. There is no longer any kind of wastewater being dropped into Nickajack Creek or into the Chattahoochee. All that flow that's coming out of the system is now being pumped out of the construction shaft and being directed around the shaft that failed, all right, directly into the water treatment plant, and is being treated, and we're back to normal flows there.
We've had a lot of people ask the question whether there's any way to determine how much was released.
No, we don't, because we don't know that, but quite honestly, I think our next priority is, now that we've stopped the overflow from spilling out of the system into the Chattahoochee, is now we have to drain that dry well, which is now a wet well, and drain it down to the bottom to find out what failed down there that caused this failure. And remember, now we're in our 11th day of this emergency, and it's taken us this long because we had to bring pumps from as far away as Illinois to here, because at the same time that we had this emergency, there were other parts of the country that were facing similar emergencies, so the pump supply was pretty thin.
Yeah. I've also got a lot of questions too about whether this is an aging infrastructure problem, but really this facility in the tunnel is not that old.
It's not.
And this is an unprecedented situation.
This is, I think everybody is wanting to see what happened at the bottom of that dry well that caused the failure that resulted all that water to flow into the dry well, and at such a rate that it overwhelmed the pumps that were already down there. We had pumps and backup pumps, but the failure was so large and so rapid that it overwhelmed the pumps because it got into the motors. And as you know, the videos in that dry well are 13 feet above the bottom of the well. the videos literally went blank within minutes of the failure. That's how fast and that's how big the failure was.
And you know, when you go down there, what strikes me is just the immense amount of work going on, and the fact that it's really been going on almost 24/7 since this happened.
Oh, absolutely. Remember, because each one of these pumps requires a generator truck on it's like an AT-wheeler. The generator is that big to drive these pumps. And fortunately, as you can see from the picture coming out of the construction shaft, the pumps that are down there now are being powered by this one generator truck. And I was talking to some of the contractors down this morning. They're talking about Georgia Power coming in there now and installing a power unit there so we no longer have to use this temporary source of power from the truck.
Last question that I've received quite a bit from people is, how much is this going to cost us?
A lot. There's no question about it. But that's not our concern right now. Our main concern right now is A, let's stop the water from spilling into our environment, and B, let's figure out what happened down there and fix it. But again, it highlights as to why it was so important in my last budget to have that $3 million disaster reserve, because I'm sure we're going to use a large chunk of that.
All right, well, I appreciate the update, and we will certainly let people know as this situation goes on, what's going on, how they solve the mystery, and again, how the cleanup's going.
Okay, thank you, Ross.
All right.